And it appears that we are live. I see there are a couple of people here already. I am doing this right now from a hotel room in Dallas, and there is a little bit of echo in this room. I, as always, have a different microphone. This is a better microphone though, so I've got high hopes for it. I see Nick is here, so if you guys can hear me and see me reasonably well without any weird artifacts, please let me know. I know the coloring looks weird. The light in this hotel room is these kind of two yellowish lamps, and the webcam in my computer is really struggling with it. But I don't think any of you are here because I'm pretty. As Mr. Nick DeVault 57 is pointing out, this is my 100th episode of DLO Live. So I appreciate you remembering. And as a to commemorate the 100th episode, I'm gonna give away a Swampfox Warhawk 2 to 10 by 44 rifle scope. Originally, I was hoping that Mr. Slavguns would join me again. He's been along for the ride for the last few years. He's a good friend, but he is elsewhere preoccupied. Mr. Guntote Minnesotan is going to hop on better. Mr. Pete Grant goes here, and you see you better than part one. Excellent. So I did find some issues with my network after the part one debacle. So I changed my cable modem and everything, but again, I'm not home right now. I will likely try to do another live stream. I'll pick a topic, maybe talk about tripods. A week from today, I'll do that from home. The new cable modem, new routers, new access points, everything. It just pissed me off, and I went and spent a ton of money to get a properly functioning network. Hopefully it's going to work okay. I've got a different microphone that I'll just leave in my bag that I travel with, so hopefully I won't have these technical issues. They piss me off to no end. I don't know why they piss me off so much, to be honest with you, but they do. Anyhow, so I'm going to be raffling off this scope. I went and found a picture for you. I obviously don't have the scope itself with me since, I am on travel. Here is a picture of the scope when it was sitting on my, excuse me, 18-inch AR. There we go. Swampfox Warhawk 2 to 10 by 44. I have not removed the rings from it, so I don't know if there are ring marks or not. And I think I have a picture from the other side as well. There we go. There's the other side. So I'll pull off the rings and see if there are any ring marks. But aside from that, optically and mechanically, it's really functioning well. Okay. I'll do this. Let's see. So I'm in Texas, so it's 8 o'clock here. 7 o'clock Mountain Time. I think of this in terms of Mountain Time. I am going to do the raffle at let's say 7:45 Mountain Time in about 40 minutes. You still have time to enter. Very few people have entered so far, which surprised me a little bit, but it happens. I think they only have like 12 entries, so the chances are pretty good. And if you still want to enter, you have to do the following. You have to send me an email at raffle at raffle at darklordofoptics.com. You have to be a member of my locals community, darklordofoptics.com. You can make a free account. And you have to send me an email with your full name and your screen name on my locals community. Those are the only requirements, other than you do have to be present when I do the drawing in about 40 minutes. Nick is kind of asking an interesting question in terms of what has been my favorite live stream aside from this one. I honestly don't know. That is a really good question. I retain the thumbnails for these. When you create a live stream, YouTube, you put in a thumbnail. It's a little picture you see at the top of each video. And right now, I just pulled up all these thumbnails. I'm looking at them, and I gotta say, I can't immediately say which one I like the most. I like the while the reviews are good, I like the explanation stuff. So, so I've done a couple educational ones where we're explaining how thermals work and night vision, some basics of how to look at radicals and things like that. I really like those. But honestly, I like all of them, and I like them because of the Q&A. Um, my favorite part of every live stream is usually, oh, there I go. Two people are trying to join me. Let me pop them on. Gunto to Minnesota is here, and Vernon is here. To the stream. All right. I'll just let them in. Okay. All right. I'll let them get situated, and then I'll let them on. Oh, this is a good one. Most engaging live stream topics or favorite guests. Oof, that's an interesting one. I'm sort of a slightly weird guy, so the most engaging live stream topic might not be the one that got most engagement from you guys. But for example, what about a month or so ago, Lamar did a live stream with Scott Parks on how and why rifle scopes break, which to me is a very interesting topic because it's one of the most misunderstood. But it didn't get that many views. But to me, that was relevant to how we think of rifle scopes, and offered take because it was both me and Scott. And Scott worked for Vortex for many years now. He's with Geistley. So that is the kind of information you will get nowhere else. But interestingly, it was not far from being the most popular live stream. And as far as live stream guests, oh gosh, I kind of genuinely appreciated when people take the time and join me. And I'm also relatively picky, so I only invite people generally that I don't mind seeing here. There's one more Norwegian room. That's interesting. Okay, go figure. It's the software is telling me there is a person in the waiting room requiring approval, but then it says no one is in the waiting room, so I don't know, something is off. I allowed gun-toting Minnesotan in, and he is getting situated. Nod when you're ready to get added to the live stream. So, all right, Andrew, you ready? I'm gonna
Yep.
go with the yes.
Hey,
I'll assume that was it.
yes. Is my audio working
All
okay?
right, since Andrew's here, he's officially my favorite live stream guest. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, he's up there. Andrew was interesting. So the Andrew and I did the election live stream last year, and that was actually a blast. It was really interesting. There was a dude who decided to argue religion with me, so I left him to Andrew's good graces because aside from the fact that he does this for a living, sort of he's also a much nicer man than I. Because if I kept up with that discussion, it would have ended relatively badly. Uh, so I don't know. I will say this. So I most of the people who have come to join me for a live stream have been interesting. I'm kind of picky that way. I don't invite everyone. The people I usually enjoy the most are the ones who offer a alternative to things that I would not have come up with myself. So Andrew has been one of them. Travis Bader, the gentleman who does Silverco podcast over in Canada. I need to have him on again. Very interesting guy. Also, kind of a little bit of an out of the box thinker. I really enjoyed it. Max Slavguns has been absolutely instrumental. Like when I have technical issues, when I need to bounce an idea off of someone, he's one of the guys I talk to because we make fun of each other all the time. But to be fair, when we're not just having fun, we're fairly serious people, and he's an interesting guy and a smart guy. So Scott Parks, that I mentioned before. One time I managed to get Sean Houston, a custom knife maker out of Portland, to join me, and I really like knives. And he's a serious metallurgist, right? He really understands steels, and picking his brain was remarkable. So I'm kind of going through this in my head, and there's no one that I thought was the most exemplary guest above all. Lots of people have come here to join me who have offered expertise. I guess that's probably the best way to think about it, is that I look for expertise. We live in a very interesting world, right? Because I'll get political for a moment and I'll go back to optics. Because something that a lot of us have suspected for a little while, but when COVID hit, the expert class failed us tremendously. And I probably shouldn't speak, within my range. I am well within the field of an expert class, right? And the things that I do for my day job, I do for a living. There's 20 of us, and that's pretty much it, right? So it's just a somewhat exotic field that's not super exposed to the public. But during COVID, our expert class has failed us. And since then, a significant number of people, especially on the right, which kind of upsets me because I am on the right politically, have decided that because our experts failed us during COVID, that expertise doesn't matter. And that is how you regress back into the Stone Age, right?
Yeah.
We may want to think differently how we treat the expert class and how we educate people who choose to live off of their expertise, live off of their ideas. But it doesn't mean that expertise is irrelevant. No, to be fair, if expertise was irrelevant, none of you would be here, right? None of you are here because I'm pretty or because I speak nicely. It's because I know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
So expertise matters. We forget about it. And the guests that I really probably enjoyed the most are the ones who offered expertise that I don't have. I think that's probably the best way to say this. What are your thoughts on that, Andrew?
Yeah. One thing that's interesting. So my full time job, if people didn't know, I'm a full time pastor, and that's not what we're going to talk about because there's a title on the stream, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But I'm a
Yeah.
full time pastor, and one thing I have to remind Christians of is every once in a while Christians, because there's a heavy insistence on Holy Spirit leading and inner guiding of the Spirit man, because there's such a confidence in that. Sometimes there will be kind of a poo poo on scholarship, and that's not wise. First of all, it's not biblical, but secondly, that's not wise because I wouldn't have an English translation Bible if it wasn't for scholars. So the ignorance of a person who's like, nope, I don't need anybody else's wisdom. I can figure it out on my own. I know everything by myself as a 21st century American. And somehow this ancient document, I just got it all hammered out by myself. The ignorance of that is crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy that people speak that way when they're reading an English translated text. But anyways, I'll just leave it at that. I agree with you. I thought that was a very good breakdown that you had.
Okay. So Mr. Alpine over there says, we aren't here because you're pretty, it's just a bonus. So he lives somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. That just got erased from my travel list. If there is no reason to go to any place where I am considered pretty, okay? All right, that having been said, so let's go back to optics. So what we did last week, not super successfully, well, relatively successfully, was try to go over hunting scope recommendations, a little bit what to look for. And we started on the low end. We talked about a few different options from reputable makers. We got to about $1,000 price range, and then between technical issues and uh, all of us making fun of each other, we kind of ran out of time a little bit. So I would like to start in the $1,000 price range, go over a few recommendations here and there, and then move on up from there. And the reason why I like to dwell on this ballpark $1,000 price range is that from what I've seen, this is the amount of money, and it's a pretty significant amount of money, right? But this is the amount of money where you are, at this point, you really should not be accepting a whole lot of compromises. You can get a very full featured scope that is well made. You can choose where you want that scope to be made. It can be US, Japan, Philippines, whatever. You can have a front focal plane or a second focal plane. You will have reticle illumination. You will have properly set up turrets, and you should be expecting this scope to be absolutely dead nuts reliable, or as reliable as any scope made. Going higher in price range than this does get you more performance, but in my opinion, that's where you really start getting into diminishing returns. From what I've seen, one, this is the where normally you pay more money, you get more scope, right? In my opinion, this is where there's this inflection point in the curve where for a lot more money, you're not getting that much more.
Hmm.
Okay. So the scopes we talked about last week, I think one that got a lot of attention from us was the Tracked. Talk about it because Tracked had $100 off for Labor Day.
Hmm.
But I talk about that scope quite a bit. I've tested a lot of Tracked scopes, and on balance, for the money and everything, that is my favorite. I do have two of them, and there is a reason for it. Because I can just do so much with that thing. It's a front focal plane design. It has a relatively visible reticle. I can use it behind a clip on 2.5 power. It has enough magnification range for me to do Western hunting or to go into the closer range stuff on low power. It is robust, made in Japan, turrets, elevation turret locks. There's just the scope has a lot going for it. And one of the things you'll see here from me is that I really like this general magnification range, 2.5 to 15, 3 to 15, thereabouts. When we talk about a general purpose hunting scope, and Andrew, like, interrupt me if I say something stupid, but when we talk about the general purpose hunting scope, 25 years ago when I first started looking at this, it was a 3 to 9. I
Hmm.
remember years ago, I wrote an article about a bunch of euro-ish 3 to 9 hunting scopes, and they were all right around $400 back then. It was a Zeiss Conquest, the Miopta Mio Pro, and there were a couple others here and there. Nowadays, the general purpose hunting scope, because technology moves forward, has really become something like a 3 to 15 or thereabouts. Because with a 3-time erector ratio, there are not a whole lot of new designs that do that. Partly because most of the rifle scopes are um, made by some relatively small number of OEMs. It doesn't mean they're all the same, but what happens is that different brands go to an OEM, original equipment manufacturer, and say, okay, I want a scope roughly along these lines. And then the OEM will produce some sort of a house model that's that or in the ballpark or something like that, right? And the customer, being a brand like Vortex, Zeiss, Tracked, whatever, goes, okay, this is a good start, but I'd like to change a couple of things. Tracked wants to use shot glass in their scopes, and they are very particular about what kind of turrets they use, etc. Delta does something else. So there are quite a few variations in the theme. It doesn't mean they're all identical. Some are. Some brands just go to an OEM, slap their label on a house model, and you're good to go. Most introduce some sort of changes. A change may be as simple as paying more for quality control, so you get a more consistent, better built scope. But the core design is largely the same. And the core erector ratio, meaning the ratio between high and low power, has really transitioned to about 5 for full size scopes, where the norm used to be 3.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Okay. That's why what used to be ubiquitous 3 to 9 20 years ago now is a relatively ubiquitous 3 to 15. And if you look at where some of the more major brands have positioned their higher end hunting scopes, this is what you'll see. You'll see Vortex Razor HD LHT 3 to 15 by 42 and by 50, right at that 1200-ish ballpark price range. Leupold has the VX5 HD. So they just introduced the Gen 2 of that. So Gen 1 has very nice deals, $200-300 off. Previously mentioned tracked right around $1,000 for a 2.5 to 15 by 44 model. 3G within their Credo something line or Acupoint, depending on the illumination, could be called different, has a 2.5 to 12.5 by 42. That one is a second focal plane, which is a very respectable scope, and they are all broadly comparable in terms of build quality and image quality. And you're choosing on you want a front focal plane or second focal plane scope, and does that reticle really work for you? Okay. Burris does something a bit different in there, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Other than that, Andrew, am I forgetting any particularly interesting version models in the $1,000 price range?
I just as a really quick question, is there anything from
Mhm.
GPO that you would put in this conversation?
So probably the basic problem is that, so as I've mentioned last week, when I make the recommendation, doesn't mean it's not exhaustive. There are just so many of them.
Yeah,
But I can only endorse scopes that I have enough mileage with to
yeah.
be able to talk about. GPO makes several models that are in this range.
Hmm.
And from what I've seen, they're generally pretty good, but I have not tested them, right? So what happened with GPO, and Nick, I see there are a couple of questions from you, and I'll put them up in a moment. Um, what happened with GPO is that, so the guy who runs their worldwide marketing is a good friend of mine. He used to be at Meopta. His name is Suruch. He's a really good dude. The guys in the US office I didn't know especially well. When the whole thing, GPO originally started, I reached out to them. I wanted to test something, and there was a lady there who was a little bit difficult. And difficult in the sense that I sort of um, mentioned that if they want a guaranteed good review, I'm really not a good person for that.
Right.
And she vanished on me. And I kind of get that. Um, I don't begrudge brands that, but I also don't work like that.
Hmm.
So I completely ignored GPO. I would swing by to see what they're up to at SHOT Show, but I did not make an effort to do any sort of a broad coverage of their scopes. So more recently, the gentleman who does sales for him, his name is Tony Trani, and I've known him on and off for quite a few years. He approached me and said, "Do you want to look at a scope?" And I was interested in their short scope, the Centuri 4 to 16, which I
Yep.
genuinely liked. But the window story died on me, so I sent it back and said, "Okay, well, we'll revisit this." But because of this, there was this gap in my coverage of GPO because I will absolutely not have anything to do with companies who have an expectation of what kind of content I'm supposed to produce.
Right.
Okay.
My
So
my
have you had a
actual
lot of mileage with them? Because I've like the other scopes I just haven't seen outside shot show.
yeah, my actual only experience with a GPO optic in hand that I own is I have the super compact 4 to 16, and I have
Correct. That
some
was the scope. Yeah.
yeah, I have some critiques with that optic. And that's not even the price point of what we're
Hmm.
talking about. But yeah, I was just curious about some of the higher priced ones. If you spent time, I know they do some very practical reticles for close range, long
Hmm.
range, and they have some exposed turret models. They have some
Correct.
cap models. They honestly have just a lot of optics. Their
Hmm.
line is a large line for
Correct.
kind of obvious reasons
Yeah.
why they have a lot to pick from.
Hmm.
Um, but I would like to see more from that. I think that they could put up more competition to some of the brands we just talked about if there were
Hmm.
more models in hands of people like yourself or maybe even like myself to put them to the test and find out, how reliable are these designs? What is the image like? Because they do tend to have a little bit bigger objective bells than some of the other models out there. And like you had
Correct.
mentioned just the other day, that there's kind of a trend of LPVO hunting and that sort of thing, and that's not necessarily
Yeah, I don't think that's a brilliant
not
idea. No.
necessarily a good trend when we have the opportunity to get other similarly priced optics with 44 millimeter objectives. and you're going to get just a brighter image. Like when I'm hunting, I can hunt a half an hour past sundown, but I can't see crap through an LPVO past a half an hour. There's just no chance. If I'm on 3 or
Yeah,
4
in the
power, I
dark.
can't
I
see
mean,
anything.
you yeah. If you drop down magnification, you can. I mean, it's still better than your naked eye, but it's not as good as a proper hunting
Yeah.
scope with a 40 millimeter or large objective.
Hmm.
Yeah. So again, GPO is sort of on my list, but what happened to me a few years ago, I stopped chasing brands and scopes, right? Because I'm busy and I have so much stuff here. Like I've spent the last 2 years refusing half of the things that were offered to me for review because I just don't have time. So, with GPO a few years ago, I asked the lady, told me to buzz off, and not so many words, and I just ignored them. Even being friendly with the guys there in Europe and all sort of stuff, I'm just not gonna chase after it.
Yeah.
So, before I go and look at Nick's questions, one thing I will mention. So I was just looking at what I use, and one of the scopes that doesn't get any coverage, and it really should, especially for people a bit further east. So Delta, there's this Polish company that I'm very friendly with that I like, and they make occasionally these oddball configurations. And I remember when I was just starting up, one of my favorite scopes ever was a Zeiss Diavari 1.5 to 6 by 42. That was kind of a relatively classic German hunting configuration for driven game, a lot of other things because you go really fast on 1.5 power. But you went up to 6, and 6, well spoiled by high magnification. And 6 is really enough to shoot pretty far out, right? So when I was just training, we were shooting man-sized targets to 800 meters with a 4-power scope just fine. And 6 with a nice objective is actually pretty decent. Well, barely anybody makes a 1.5 to 6 rifle scopes anymore. Schmidt still has a Zenith, which occasionally, if you find that one on discount, it's an amazing scope.
They're on
Delta
sale on
made
Euro
sort
Optic
of
right
a.
now.
Go ahead.
They're on sale on Euro Optic right now. If anybody was interested in a really good set of hunting optics, go to Euro Optic right now because the Schmidt line is highly reduced, and this isn't going to last very long. I'll just throw that plug out really quick. That
Yeah.
there's some of the 3 to 12s on there, and then some of the other low power optic. I think the 2 to 10
You're
is on
talking
there
about
right
the classic 3 to 12 by 42? That's a
now.
nice scope.
I have to look up.
I'll put a link up. Give me a sec.
Yeah, yeah. It is on there. There's a couple on there for a good deal. The 2.5 to 10 by 50
Yeah.
is
I
going
think I
for
saw a 1.5 to 6 Zenith and a 3 to 12. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Yeah, that's on sale right now too. That's a really
So
nice
Schmidt
optic.
is one of the brands I was about to get to before we go. Yeah,
Hmm.
so Schmidt 2.5 to 10 by 56 Classic is right now $1,400. That's actually pretty good. For that scope, it's really good. All right, I'm gonna sort these and I'm gonna make a link and put it in the comments. You can get an 8-power Classic. So we need to talk a little bit about low light. That's actually a separate conversation. But so let me finish the story with Delta. So Delta makes a scope that's sort of a spiritual successor to what the old 1.5 to 6 used to be. Hold on, I'm putting a link in, and so it goes to all platforms. There you go. That's a link to the Schmidt and Bender scopes on Euro Optic, and we'll see. Okay, so let's finish this story, and then we'll look at some comments, and we'll go up in price range. But anyhow, so Delta makes a 1.5 to 9 by 44. It's a Japanese-made scope made by Light Optics Works. They have a couple of different versions, a couple of reticles. One is a regular number 4. Another one is a reticle they call 2AS, I think, something like that. And it kind of looks like a number 4, but it has a couple of dots to the left and right. So my buddy Don at NX Defense sells them. So NX Defense website has them. And I think he actually has that reticle. Let me put it up on the screen. I have that. I have a Browning BLR takedown on 300 Wisdom, and that's the scope I have on that. It's not an ultra lightweight scope 4AS reticle. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna show you a picture momentarily. It's not an ultra lightweight scope. That's my only kind of complaint with it. But that thing, there you go. So I'm gonna put it up on the screen. It's under grants, I think 850 900 bucks, something like that. Where is it? There you go. That's the scope. So how much? $890. Optically, it is spectacular. What Delta did with it, rather than go crazy with the reticles, they put in a wire reticle with a fiber illuminated dot. So on 1.5 power, you have essentially what looks like kind of like a number 4 with an illuminated dot. So the thing is stupid fast. This is what this reticle looks. No, that's a number 4. That's not the reticle. That's not the 2AS. 2AS reticle has the bar, the vertical bar a little bit closer to the center. And yeah, it's a different reticle. So I'll find a picture elsewhere later. And it has a couple of dots for leading the game. But the center, the primary aiming point is this really bright, extremely visible fiber dot. Of all of the conventional scopes you're going to see outside of low power variables, this may very well be the fastest on target I've seen because it's stupid easy to get behind, because it has moderate magnification, nothing in optical system is stressed, and it's really easy to use. It's not a Western hunting scope, right? You can do some basic clover and stuff like that. You can do a lot of things with it in a pinch. It's not for that. But for shooting, for relatively quickly getting on target and shooting within the maximum point blank range of your rifle, that's just an excellent design. So that's why I use it in a relatively accurate lever gun, but still a 300 Wisdom lever gun. All right. We'll talk about low light and Schmidt momentarily because it kind of bridges the gap. We can have some questions. You look like you want to say something.
Well, I was just looking over that optic. I'm actually not familiar with this. I like Delta quite a bit. I like that they do things different
Yeah.
and that they are outside the box. Every once in a while they hit it well. Like I actually like that the 1 to 10 has a side parallax. I think that's awesome. And I know not everybody's going to like that. I heard, I think Brass
Yeah,
Facts
it's a
had
nice
kind
scope.
of,
I have one.
yeah, I would like to, when I need to connect with them a little later, but this one has stepless illumination. You're a fan of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah, that doesn't matter
So
to you.
GPO, their scopes have stepless illumination. They do a very good job with that. Quite a few scopes out there do. I honestly don't hugely care one way or the other. I know some people are very particular that they want offset settings on off as you go up. That works. I don't know. I never really. It all functions as long as the dynamic range of reticle illumination is properly worked out. I don't really see. I
And
don't see an
this
issue.
and this
So
really
here's an
has a
interesting question, and I'm very curious.
oh, go ahead.
Mhm. Go ahead. You started saying something, and then I interrupted you as always.
Sorry, it's the delay between us. This one has a very minimal magnification nub or assist nub to it. So
Mhm.
on hunting optics, how big of a deal is that to you personally that it has something a little bit more aggressive to hold on to?
It has so it comes with a little knob in a box that you can put in, so that's a little so you have something to hold on to,
Okay.
like a small cattail.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that optic. Interesting. We can move on.
It's just not in the picture there. Okay. Guys, when I see Andrew, he occasionally fizzles. I don't know my. But anyhow, so I put up a question from Nick Gold. Are the hunting scope characteristics first-time buyers may focus on too much? as opposed to what you may look for in a tactical or long range PRS scope. There are a few. I don't know, Andrew, you want to tackle this first,
Yeah, yeah, I'll do my
or
best.
you
I'll
want
be
me to do
brief,
it?
and then I'll let you jump in.
Kind of
So
curious about what you're going to say.
yeah, yeah. Are there hunting scope characteristics first time buyers may
Go for it.
focus on too much as opposed to what you may look for in a tactical? Well, in again my application, when we're talking about closer range hunting, let's say well, you use the frame or the phrase point blank distance, which is a very practical phrase for the hunting that I'm most engaged with whitetail. Let's say whitetail, moose, some elk, that sort of thing, bear. Most of the shots around here are going to be point blank distances. So for my application of hunting in the north and wooded areas and generally in the northeast, I think people way too much emphasize smaller reticles, uh, exposed turrets, which in my area is just not that necessary to do unless you have a crossover optic, and so they'll or lift to operate or lock turrets, this or that. I could run, and most people could run a higher quality, more preferred setup with better glass, perhaps better illumination, better footprint, light collection, those sort of things. That's what I would be more prone to prioritize for a hunting optic in my areas when I'm hunting and it's dark and it's cold and it's snowy out. That's what I would be more interested in. I think a lot of newbies in my area, when they're getting into hunting or they hunted when they were a kid and they're now looking for an optic to throw on um, their lever gun or something, they're getting optics that are too heavy because they're trying to get all these other features crammed into a scope, which lowers the quality of the optic because you're now paying for these other features that they may or may not be there. So I think for first time buyers, you should seriously consider what your actual application is, what you're going to be hunting, the time of day you're going to be hunting, um, how much you need for magnification is a huge thing. People always seem to go too heavy, whether it's in competition or in hunting. They're always too heavy on magnification as newbies because they think big zoomies means I can see better, and all that means is a worse field of view. Sometimes the magnification it's a degradation of your image kind of thing where it's getting dark, you're zooming in too much, and you're trying to put all the eggs in that basket of having lots of zoomies, and that's not a good idea. You need to learn how to shoot and be more proficient with a wider field of view and lower magnification. And first time buyers should be looking at a nice bright image with a practical reticle, and then weight is also a serious consideration in my opinion, and comfort behind the rifle. Think about how you actually hold the gun when you're hunting. Do you hunt primarily from a stand? Well, then that's going to affect the way that you hold the gun. Are you somebody who has the ability to shoot in the prone? And what kind of setup are you putting it on? If are you putting it on more of a very traditional rifle, or are you putting it on something where you're going to be proned out and it's in a chassis and you're taking 4 or 5 or 800 yard, the 800-yard shots that we don't think anybody really should be taking. Um, that affects so much. And so my opinion is the characteristic for first time buyers is they're not putting enough thought into it. They're looking at what everybody else is doing instead of thinking about what they personally are actually going to do.
That's actually a very, very good summary. I would distill it to two most important things where I am in complete agreement with you. The mistakes that vast majority of first-time hunting scope buyers make, they get a scope with too much magnification and with a reticle that is too thin. There is a simple drill, and I don't know who I picked it up from, right? If you think of your field shooting positions, right? So the most unstable is just offhand. You're shooting standing completely unsupported. Second most unstable is some version of kneeling, whichever one you prefer. Then a little bit more stable is some version of sitting. Sit on your ass, put your elbows forward of your knees. And the most stable is prone. What everybody who is new to hunting should do, take a paper plate, Go plaster it on a target, wherever is convenient. Let's say 50 yards, which should be straightforward, right? Nothing to it, right? Take your rifle, hold it in one hand stand, start the timer, drop into prone, get it on your plate, and take a shot. You will probably, hopefully, hit the plate close to dead center. No bipods, nothing, just prone off of your elbows. Time how long that took you. Stand up. Start the timer again. Sit in your ass. Take a shot at the same plate sitting. Time when you broke the shot. Hopefully, you hit the plate. Stand up again. Drop on your knees or one knee, whichever is your preferred kneeling position. Take the same shot at the same plate, 50-ish or so yards. Not 50 yards is not very far, right? Then take the same shot standing. Here's the catch: the hardest shot out of all of these is going to be standing. It's very likely to also take you the longest time, although you don't have to assume any sort of position, because if you don't do this often enough, you'll find all sorts of wobble, everything's going to be shaking and all that. Yeah, and I know service rifle guys do it very well. I'm assuming just somebody new to this and time it. You have to be able to set a scope on a magnification where you can do all four of these shots comfortably without messing with your scope. And what you will find is that you can, when you have a good shooting position, you can do it on high magnification. Low magnification is going to be all about the same. When you have a wobbly shooting position standing unsupported, you can only do this on low magnification. Some, how low you don't know, right? Some people can do it on 6, some people need 2. You don't know. But this is the exercise that tells you what needs to be your lowest, what needs to be the most critical low power on your rifle scope. Remember, Andrew, a week ago I was talking about when we think of magnification, we think about high mag too much. Now we should be thinking, what do you have on the low end of that scope, and how usable is that? Right? I do a ton of practice with prismatics, which have fixed power scopes. So I can do this drill in about 5 or 6 power relatively well. But when I first did it, it was an absolute clusterfuck. Forgive my language. And I ended up doing most of my offhand shooting stuff in about 3 power, because anything more than that, and what happens, your all your tremor and shaking is exacerbated. You start trying to correct it, and you just shoot worse. And another thing you'll find is that if the reticle is very thin, whether it's second or front focal plane scope, doesn't matter. If the reticle is very thin, good luck trying to shoot anything standing.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just not going to work. So you have to have a rifle scope configuration that is capable of doing these 4 shots from these different shooting positions on a target relatively not far away. And if you can easily hit that thing standing every time at 50 yards, move it off to 75 yards and repeat the exercise. Okay, so that's your basic criteria of how to set up a scope. And if I take my 7 to 35 tangent that I compete with and that I love dearly, I don't want to say it, I love it more than my children. I do love my children, but I love it more than some of my cousins. I mean, and I can shoot it kind of on 7 power and stuff like that, but I'm not taking that scope hunting. I will if I have to, but given an option, I'm gonna take something else. Okay. Hope that made sense. And we're getting close to the point where I'm gonna do the raffle for the Warhawk. I'm just letting people in, so let's do a couple more questions and see. So also from Mr. Devolt. Friend has a Ruger Scout Rifle 308, which runs at 227. Okay, do you have any thoughts on usage of Scout scopes in hunting applications? Do you have any 227 scopes that you would prefer? Do you have a lot of mileage with Scout scopes, Andrew?
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't stand them. And I'll just say that much.
Yeah. So I really like them overall. But if low power variables existed when Colonel Cooper was coming up with a Scout concept, we wouldn't have Scout scopes. They have their place on takedown lever guns and stuff like that. But if you're going hunting with the Ruger Scout Rifle 308, What you should do, you should go to a company called XS Sights, and they sell this full-length
Mm.
Picatinny rail that goes all the way to the back of your Ruger receiver, and put a normal scope on it. I like scout scopes. I think a 2 to 7 scout scope is a mistake and a gross misunderstanding of what scout scopes are. A scout scope is intended to be very lightweight because it's fairly far forward, fixed power scope of about 2.5 or so magnification or thereabouts, with a reasonably visible reticle that you can get on target very fast, and which will give you just a little bit more magnification, which will help a little bit. Aside from that, they're not great. The only reason Cooper did a scout scope is that he was working with the older Mausers and stuff, and he wanted to load them with a stripper clip, so he wanted to keep that option available. It is still better than iron sights, and they are fast if you train with both eyes open. Just did an article on scout scopes. They are surprisingly practical, but I like scout scopes for historical reasons above all. My favorite scout scope is probably Ruger 2.75 to 20. Very light, easy to see something, easy to get behind, and it has a bolder reticle than most of the competition. I don't like variable scopes in a scout configuration. This is the type of rifle scope that you mount, sight in, and never touch again. But still, like in a modern, other than for nostalgic reasons, in a modern marketplace, their best application is with takedown lever guns because the scout scope attaches to the barrel. So if you remount, if you take it apart and mount it back on, you don't have to worry about zero shift. Yeah. All right. So Mr. Lee, Stay on Target says that YouTube is about 6 second delay compared to locals. Yeah, all the different platforms have slightly. This is going to YouTube, X, Facebook, Rumble, and locals, and they all have slightly different delay. So, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Mr. More Grip is here. All right, we'll have a couple of people. Oh, that's interesting. Good question. Mr. More Grip, a bit off topic perhaps. When or if running a red dot with a rifle scope, which mounting point do you prefer and why? Do you run offset or piggyback red dots, Andrew, or is that not quite your lane?
I do. I do quite a bit, actually. I think I have 4 rifles with a red dot on it. And it's not, for me at least, it's not for finding the target on my precision rifle. Most of the time, like I have a couple hunting setups with a red dot mounted over the top because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like a small game, I'll take shots at 7 yards and it's really really fast. And my red dots, like I have a Savage 110 PCS. It's a bolt action pistol that I put a brace on, and I have an LPVO on it, so it still has 1 to 10 power, but nothing beats a red dot for speed. And so I have a red dot mounted above that, and it might look kind of ridiculous, but I can shoot that gun ridiculously far. I've shot that out to 800 yards with a 10-inch 300 blackout. And then I
Mm-hmm.
also, just hunting wise, practical shooting, I can do really well with that red dot at close distances. And I think having red dots mounted directly above the optic is very natural. I know a friend of mine, Joshua Fralek, who is a competitive shooter, is like world's best 3-gun shooter. He does a thing where he'll have a red dot on top and a red dot on the side, and he loves doing the transition between the two. I don't prefer running red dots to the side. That might have something to do with the way that I shoot guns, but I like having the red dot mounted just above the turret and enough room to breathe there. It does make your setup kind of tall, but that's the way that I run it, and almost exclusively on hunting or defensive rifles. That's how it's set up for me.
Interesting. So I have to admit I don't have auxiliary red dot sights on any of my hunting rifles, which is probably a reflection on the fact that I live out west in the mountains. And we talked about shots we've taken on game, right? And the closest shot I've ever taken on an animal was a pig at about 180 yards, something like that. And the elk, sheep, whatever else that I've had a chance to hunt was always between 300 and 500 yards. So, but I've thought about it, and I might be adding a red dot to some of my hunting setups just for comprehensiveness and also to have a little bit of redundancy. On AR-15s, I very routinely have offset red dots. And my basic take on this, I can do piggybacked, meaning that's on top or offset. On AR platform guns, under normal circumstances, I prefer an offset red dot simply because they are what's called straight stock rifles, right? The buffer tube where the stock is exactly straight line with the barrel. So this slight rotation is super fast for me. And I train with this and I've taken classes with that and all that. However, if it happens to be a rifle that is where the stock is not perfect line up, where my shoulder is not straight behind the barrel, for those I prefer piggyback because with rifles like that, when you start rotating them, there is a weird offset in how the dot moves, and then offset is not comfortable for me. I can do both, but most of my mileage is with AR pattern guns with offset dots, and there I prefer at about 30-45 degrees off. I've run both. I've taken classes with both. Honestly, pick the one you like. Go practice. I don't think it makes a difference. Stay on targets goes 2D reticle and a delta, correct? Yeah, that's the reticle I meant. Brand, because my buddy has an RMR on his scope mount. He was using a prairie dogs last weekend. Then when they would come out 25 to 30 yards away, worked pretty slick. Yeah, I believe it. So Brand is, I think, in Nebraska, if I remember correctly. So makes me think I should go to Nebraska, shoot some prairie dogs. I think that's a good plan. All right, we're at 7:53 Mountain Time. Let's do the raffle for the scope. Let me count. I had a few late submissions. Let me count how many, and then I'll run the random number generator. So 1, 2. All right, I've got a total of 16 entrants. I've got a random number generator pulled up. Let me put that on the screen. We are going to run a random number between 1 and 16. And we picked number 8. So let me go and figure out who was the 8th entry. And we'll go, that person gets free scope. So, all right. Mr. Brandt 92, you still here? I assume he is. You were the 8th email, you get a scope.
Woo! Sweet. That's a great giveaway.
Alrighty.
That's a really nice giveaway.
It's a nice scope.
Yeah, guys, I'm not doing that on my channel.
I'm done testing it.
Awesome.
All right, Brandt, I'll shoot your name when you're done with this. Send me your address. When I get home, I'll pick it up, send it to you. So this I actually like. I swear I didn't stage this, but I like the way it worked out. So for those who haven't been here, I'm at Senior Brandt at the match in Wyoming at the Burris Optics Team Challenge. And my teammate was a CTO from Q, Ethan, and Q had a fire at the factory. So for the second day of the match, he basically just vanished on me because he had to go deal with business. My 12-year-old son was there with me, and I said, "Crap! I still want to shoot a couple of stages. Maybe he can team up with me and shoot." And Brandt, I asked, I need a rifle for him. Brandt just gave me his rifle and ammo cannon and said, "Go shoot." So my son was shot a couple stages with Brad's rifle. So I like this. This is good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Mr. Cunt Bucket is now heartbroken. I feel your pain, but such is life. Anyhow, I got a bunch of gear laying around. There will be more giveaways. And we'll see what I'm gonna do on the next one. I will tell. Maybe next one is probably gonna be a tripod of some sort. I was, I did a couple days ago when I was still home. I went and said, okay, so how many tripods can I get my hands on without getting out of my office chair? And this is how many. That's just without lifting my ass from my chair. So I need to do a video on tripods and give some away. Okay, where were we? So we did the raffle. We talked about the change. So as we go into the higher price ranges, we have price tiers set up on my website, on my optics notes on my old website. I've got recommendations broken down by price, and after 1,200, next category we go to is $2,000, and that's a big jump. So before we go there in some sort of a detail, what I want to talk a little bit about is low light. I tend to, when I do rifle scope recommendations for hunting, I usually separate general purpose hunting scopes from low light, because low light is a little bit different. You really want to maximize your objective diameter, and you don't care about magnification all that much. And if you're looking for a low light scope in $1,000-ish or so price range, there are a few options here and there, but I'll be honest with you, if it was my money, I would go buy Trigic Acupoint 2.5 to 10 by 56. It's been around forever. They've done zero improvements to it, largely because it didn't need any. It works great in low light. It's for your maximum point blank range shooting, and if you're shooting in low light, you really shouldn't be shooting that far. So you don't need a ton of magnification. You need lots of exit pupil. You need a very visible reticle. It would do that. Going up into the $1,200 to $1,500 range, the low light champ used to be Meopta Meostar, but Meopta is going through some period of immense fuckery. I don't know what's happening with them. So I can't in good faith recommend them because I don't know what's happening with the brand. And that's where Schmidt comes in. So Schmidt, all the new scopes from Schmidt are spectacularly expensive. And as Andrew was saying earlier, and that's a link I put up earlier to EuroOptic, their less expensive stuff, which is their original designs, are flying absolutely under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like the Schmidt Classics and occasional discounts on the Zenith. But for $1,400, you can go get a Schmidt Classic 2.5 to 10 by 56, which is optically in low light, is absolutely remarkable. Is it as good as Schmidt's Polar, for example? No, but it's not as far off as you would think. The reason the classic scopes, and they are classic starting with a K, for some reason they decided they have to misspell that word to use it as a name for the product line. The reason why they're relatively expensive is that Schmidt makes them in their factory in Hungary. But in terms of build quality, I don't think there is any practical difference in what they do in Hungary versus what they do in Germany. They just do simpler designs in Hungary. And if you are truly serious about low light, I would not complicate your life too much. If you are underground, I'd be looking at the Trigic Acupoint, 2.5 to 10 by 56. And if you're just over that, Schmidt has a 2.5 to 10 by 56 and a fixed power 8 by 56, which is kind of like turning on the light at night. Spectacularly good. Really, really. That design has been worked out in Europe since like 1970s, and since then they just improved stray light and put on good coating on it. That basic optical formula has been around forever because there was no need to improve it.
Wow.
It's just so nicely optimized. That was the classic low light European scope 8x56. Yeah, they've been making it forever, and it works, and it's just absolutely spectacular.
Hmm.
So what else can you think of in low light that I'm not thinking of? Assuming Meopta is doing something odd. There is GPO that we kind of graced on, and they have very promising designs, but I just haven't looked at them. I can't recommend them in good faith.
Ha- have you spent a little?
What else?
You've spent more time with Leica than I have. It seems like you've mentioned it a few times. I'm trying to remember if there's anything practical under $2,000 that fits this category. I feel like a lot of them are a touch above.
You may have to repeat that. You froze for a moment there.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to remember if there's anything under $2,000 from Leica that fits this category.
So, like a Amplus product line is under 2 grand. Amplus is mostly Japanese scopes with Leica's eyepieces, some modifications, but they're based on
Okay,
like subsystems from Light Optics Works. And they have a 3 to 18 by 44, and I believe 2.5 to 15 by 56 that are very, very
yeah,
good.
the 2.5 to 15.
And but the yeah, the problem with the 2.5 to 15 is that Delta in the titanium line also has that Japanese 2.5 to 15, slightly different eyepiece, but in low light it absolutely kicks ass and it costs less money.
Mm,
So Leica's eyepieces on the Amplus line are actually very good. It is an advantage. And they are beginning to bring back to the US the 40s line, which but still more expensive, about 2 grand, which is a different optical system, much closer to the Magnus that's not available in the US anymore, that's still available in Europe. That one is a big step up. But again, with Leica, the Amplus line is very good. From what I've seen, the real standout with the Amplus line as a general purpose scope is a 3 to 18 by 44.
mm.
It's compact, it's light, it's excellent optically, it's very nicely set up. And I think it is a meaningful improvement of what you get at the for about $1 grand, but I think it's in the $1,500-$1,600 range, as I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We already
That's the
talked about.
Plus, but I haven't done a super thorough test, so I'm kind of always reticent about recommending. Yeah.
We, we hadn't talked in
So,
detail
oh,
about
this
the
is actually a
toxin.
good question. Yeah. So we're just getting to that. That's a $1,500 scope. So,
Hmm.
so my next category is under 2,000. So basically, roughly between $1,200 and 2 grand, which is a broad range. And we're gonna get in there for a moment. Let's hit a couple of questions here, and then we'll move on to that. So from Brand, have you got to try out the new Zeiss tripod yet? Off topic, but might as well ask. Yes, it's actually in that picture on my phone that I just showed you guys. Let me see. So I'm gonna do a separate review on the new Zeiss tripod. The In a nutshell, I switched it. It kicks ass for shooting. It has a couple of clever features for shooting. It's probably the best tripod I've seen to date. The way the legs unlock is very clever. The way they sent me the one with all three different heads. I think in this picture, it's with the head I like the most. It's heavy. It's not for hunting, but for match shooting. It's pretty good. Let me put that on the screen. And I'll zoom in so you see it. So the blue one, This guy, so that's the Zeiss tripod. Yeah, until they want it back, that's gonna be my go-to tripod for shooting matches. Absolutely spectacular. Very cleverly done head, very cleverly done leg release. It is very fast to deploy, nice inverted legs. It's not a light tripod, it's not for heads. I'll probably do a good coverage of that, but for shooting, just superb. Oh, this is actually interesting. From Mr. Cunt Bucket. I'm curious, how were you all introduced to the idea of running a dot with a scope? I only started doing it because of Great War and Terror training, but I never thought about how non-vets found out about it. How did you find out about it, Danger?
I'm going to pull the card and say I was doing it before it was cool. I experimented with this years ago when I first got into guns by cobbling together parts that shouldn't go together and throwing cheap, crappy red dots on guns and seeing what they could do alongside of an optic. So I had run SWFAs like with everybody else for a long time. And I was like, I'm gonna find a way to get a red dot on here because I was running a fixed 10 or a fixed 12, and obviously you can't do much with that other than long range. So I started messing around with that, finding ways to get it mounted up on there, and it always looked real goofy. And I was very pleased when I finally started seeing design mounts and intentional rings for this kind of thing because my methods were pretty cringy.
I'm sort of in the same boat. 25 years ago, maybe around there, maybe a little more, Schmidt made the first short dot 1 to 4, which I thought was amazing, but well out of my price range. SWFA had just introduced that 3 to 9 by 42 front focal plate scope, which I still have two of, and I love them dearly. And I don't remember who it was. Somebody made the ring that had the red dot mount in it. So I popped a red dot on top of the piggybacked it onto 3 to 9 scope, and that was good.
Mhm.
But to be fair, back then I was doing a lot more experimenting with gear than focused shooting practice. I became much better shot a lot more recently. I do everything in a best backwards manner. Most people learn to shoot properly first and then do gear. I got into this because I like gadgets and I like gear, and I'm sort of a nerdy technology oriented guy. So, but that was that, and then after a little bit after that, you started seeing pictures of the Trigicons with a red dot mounted on top. I'm not a huge ACOG fan, but although it's a decent scope, and I decided to do a big comparison of 4-power prismatics. And the one I loved the most was the 4-power Alcan, which I still have, and on top of that, I've got a red dot. And since then, I've been using it fairly consistently. Basically, even when low power variables started coming in, one of the things I figured out very, very fast is that if you want good low light performance and you want speed up close, you're not going to get that with a single low power variable. The objective's too small. So the best way for me to get that was to take a 4-power prismatic with a large objective and couple it with an offset or piggybacked red dot sight. So, okay. Let's see, Mr. Wills Martin. Will a 50 millimeter objective scope of a lesser optical quality, such as Mark 5 to 25, have any optical performance benefits over a 50 millimeter objective scope of high optical quality, such as ZCOM 4 to 20? I think there's a typo in there. You're trying to say 56 millimeter scope that's not of lesser optical quality have benefits over a 50 millimeter that's higher end. The simple truth of it is that it's hard to say for sure. Where it will have an edge is on high magnifications where you just get a slightly bigger edit pupil. Is it enough of a difference to equalize the difference in optical design? It's in a case by case basis. You just don't know. Between these two, Leopold's actually not bad in low light, but I think on balance you will find that the Zico will outperform it. not by a huge margin. They are both pretty nice scopes, but that will despite having a smaller objective lens. It's one of those things, right? So if somebody comes to me and asks me, okay, what I am gonna get one super fancy hunting rifle, and I want to put one scope on it, never take it off, never do anything else. I am a hunter, not a shooter, so I'm gonna practice, etc. But it's gonna be one gun, and I don't send them to 6 millimeter scope. I send them to what I believe to be the best overall general purpose hunting scope on the planet right now, and that's a Tangent Theta, unsurprisingly. T315H, the Hunter model, and it's a 3 to 15 by 50. It's not 56. That's a spectacular optical system. No, it's a 5,000 or 4,000, whatever it is, dollar scope. It's expensive. It's a spectacular optical system, and whatever you're giving up by not going with a large objective, it makes up for it by a really, really well balanced design and well calibrated image quality. But like with cars, there is no replacement for cubic inches. If your goal is to extract the last 3 seconds of available light, you want the largest objective bell you can get at some sort of a moderate magnification, right? You have any mileage with the Zicos Mark V's, Andrew?
Yeah. Um, I am just generally more of a fan of ZCO. I'll just put my bias out there in general. I'm not opposed to the Mark 5, Mark 4 series. I'm just not impressed by them. I kind of, if I was to be impressed, I would be more impressed with some of the Mark 4s than I am with Mark 5s. So I don't know. That might be completely counter to your perspective on it, but I'm just not huge. I'm not huge on them. There's a couple loopholes that I can get into and I find useful or better, but I just generally would be more interested in ZCO, and some of that is just plain bias. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not the same price. GCO is a much more expensive scope.
yeah, definitely.
So I'm kind of with you. I like the Mark V. I think for the money, Mark IV offers more.
Yeah.
I have a couple of Mark IVs, a 4.5 to 18 by 2.5 by 42, which I like. Again, it's not a better scope than the Mark V, but I think it's more of a scope per dollar than the Mark
hmm
V. Funny thing, I told that to Nick, the gentleman, one of the guys I know who works at Leopold. He was very offended when I said it. So he was like, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." So, but he thought about it and decided to not pick a fight over it. To his great credit.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It disappointed me a little. I enjoy arguing with guys who work for riflescope companies. So they always get very offended when I try to tell them something about their products. So I weirdly enjoy doing that. And the guy I talked to, he's actually a very nice guy. I really like him. He's a good man. But yeah, I like the Mark IVs. With Mark V's, also they're not all created equal, but the 5 to 25 I think is the best of the Mark V line. But anyhow, going back to hunting scopes, as I said, so my next category is up to $2,000. So, Mr. Shaw, you have your favorite hunting rifle, the 7 shoot over 3 counties Magnum or whatever it is that you guys shoot over there in the woods. You have $2,000. What scope do you put on there and why?
Well, I can say very specifically what I have set up right now. Down in this particular safe where I keep some of those things, I have a Telson 3 to 18 on my 7 PRC. And so 3 to 18 is more than I need. I'll be the first person to tell you that I don't have to have that much magnification in my area, but because the rifle does a couple things, that's why it's on there. And it's got a 50 millimeter objective, and that's just a touch bigger than what I have on a couple other scopes in the 40 millimeter range, right? Or wait, maybe I got that wrong. The Telson is the 3 to 18. No, it is a 50, isn't it?
By 50, it's a 50 millimeter objective.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to make sure. I just touched a couple of optics before coming up here, and I'm getting them mashed together. But the 3 to 18 by 50 has a bolder reticle than a lot of the other 3-18s that I've run. And there you go. Yeah, that's pretty cool. This was
Imagine
this
how
the,
that happens. How did that scope end up with a boulder reticle? I don't know.
yeah, yeah. How does that happen? I tend to really like it. I know if you guys watching right now didn't know, Ilya had a hand, probably a heavy hand, but I can't comment for him. He have a heavy hand in influencing the outcome and design of that reticle, and I find that I can shoot really aggressively with that. I can shoot still pretty fast. The illumination is good on it. It's a pretty bright image when I compare it to some of the 40 millimeter objective optics that I've run. So, like I said, I'm going to be shooting that optic on 6 power, 8 power a lot of times, and it has a parallax that can come quite near. So that's one of the reasons I put it on there. But then with the 7PRC, if I decide to shoot something much further and go do kind of we talked about the dreamy hunt, the western hunt. If I want to do that, I can still use that exact same
Hmm.
setup and still has knockdown power.
Yeah. I'm glad you like the reticle. Yes, I so the Telson reticles were. I did an experiment with them. I design reticles for a lot of different companies. Sometimes they're okay with me talking about it. Sometimes they don't like it. Telson guys were so okay with it. They asked me to do a digital copy of my signature and put it on every box of that scope. So if you look at the packaging, my signature and a quote is on there.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly a secret. I want a little in that scope, so I asked them to make it a little bit bolder than it is on the 5 to 32. The rifle you see is a mini fix and 6 arc, and I mentioned Telson on Sniper's Hide, and everybody started yelling that it's a new brand, nobody knows where it's going to be, you can't trust them, etc. I trust it enough that I put it in the rifle for my daughter's first hunt when the day she turned 14. So, and she shot at antelope at 340 yards, which again we live out in the open here, so it's not considered to be a super long shot, and then in the middle of the prairie you could not really comfortably get closer. In the under $2,000 price range, if you like front focal plane scopes, you have a lot of really good options to choose from. I did a side by side of a bunch of different ones with 50 millimeter objectives, and the Telson 3 to 18 by 50 actually did really, really well. I view it as what's called a crossover scope, and there are quite a few of these, and I like crossover scopes. And these are usually front focal plane 3 to 15, 3 to 18, 4 to 20, something along those lines. And the reason I call them crossover rather than just tactical is that I want the weight to be under about 30 ounces. That's relatively heavy for a hunting scope, but it's viable. It can be done. And if you are in a situation where you may have to take a longer shot, you will appreciate the, the features, right? We are out on the prairie here, there's going to be wind, so you're going to have to hold for wind. All of us match guys, we all hold for wind. In Milleradian, I don't hold for wind and half an antler or a quarter of a plate, I hold in Milleradian. And if you're going to use your reticle for any sort of a compensation, whether for wind or for drop, you pretty much want a front focal plane scope with the reticle delineated in your favorite angular units. Milleradian for me, MOA for some Stone Age people. You know how that works. Yeah. And the Telson 3 to 18 by 50 is a very good option. So I shot an antelope in the same general area almost exactly a year ago. And the scope I used the 6.5 back then. The scope I used on there was a Leupold Mark IV, a 4.5 to 18 by 52 with the illuminated PR1 reticle. And I actually like that combination. I still have that scope, which is somewhat unusual for me. Also, in that same general price range is the Vortex Razor HDLHT 4.5 to 22 by 50. Also, kind of a crossover design. That one's the lightest of the breed. It's 21.7 ounces. The reticle is not as prominent, but it's prominent enough. I shot a sheep with that scope. It's the first animal taken with that scope, which I'm quite proud of. at about 450 yards, just over out in Texas. And I have a ton of mileage with that scope. Again, I can run it across the magnification range, and I generally have a fairly usable reticle. That's one of the things, about between crossover and more of a pure competition scope. In a crossover design, I demand more of a reticle usability. I don't need to use the tree in the reticle and low power, but I want the primary steady to be relatively prominent. And I want illumination because when the light goes low, you have to have illumination with these designs.
Hmm.
With second focal plane designs, we have some very nice ones here. And the one is this Leica M Plus line that we
Yeah.
briefly talked about. They're quite nice. The regular prices and lots of Schmidt and Bender classic and scopes kind of fall in this price range, but you often find them a little bit discounted. But when you are at this $2,000 ballpark cutoff, one of the things that probably is worth your time is to go look around and see what you're going to have. Mm, Relatively commonly, you will find something that used to be a fair bit more expensive discounted into this price range. This seems to be the price range where the alpha scope makers, when they're closing something out, things are going to drop in there. Sometimes you'll find a March in there or a Schmidt or something like that, and that's usually a very, very good deal. You'll notice that there are a couple of scope manufacturers that I'm not mentioning that are in there. One is Swarovski. I have sort of I like Swarovski and color scopes, but I have a long-standing beef with the company because of the silly patent they've got that's expiring next year. So I refuse to do any coverage on colors and Swarovski until that patent expires, and we'll see what happens after that. So again, nothing about the scopes, just my dissatisfaction with some of the business practices. Okay? They're not doing anything illegal; they're just doing things I don't like. Since it's a free country, I don't have to endorse things that I don't like. Okay. So let's see what else am I forgetting. There are some Zeiss hunting scopes in there. The V6s are quite good. V4s I didn't have very good experience with. I know others have, but I don't have enough mileage to be sure. The V6 3218 by 50 from Zeiss is actually a pretty nice scope. It's a nice Japanese scope, right? So it's not anything super exotic. What else am I missing, Andrew?
Well, we covered the main things that somebody's going to find if they hop online and they're looking for the top five brands that are going to fall in this category. Since you just mentioned Swarovski, that would be like the number five to me of what's going to come up. Even though I personally, with that particular brand, I don't have any beef with them because I don't know enough about them. But when it comes to designs, I actually prefer the other ones. I'd probably be more likely to take a Leupold Mark IV over some of their designs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah.
Okay, hold on a sec. So Mr. Stan Targets, whose real name is Lee, is going to sleep. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to say goodnight. He's over on the East Coast, so it's a bedtime for him.
Thanks for watching.
He keeps on trying to win one of the raffles, it just doesn't work. Your time is coming. I sense it. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, yeah. That was all I had to say. Is I actually prefer the other designs. I'm relatively not interested in, if my opinion. If I'm going to push the limits, like the Toxin is on the little bit lower side of that budget range, I'm probably
Hmm.
just going to stick around there. And if I'm going to go above the Toxin, I'm going to go to our next conversation level, and I'm going to start looking at uh, things that are $2,500 or more. I'm just gonna jump up there personally because I think you and I probably agree on a couple of the top options. They're
Very
just
likely.
outstanding. There's just a couple outstanding options up there that I would so much rather recommend rather than settle for $200 or $300 less. So
Yeah. I'm probably with you. The basic thing, one of the things you'll notice, and again, personal preferences start coming in. The higher up in price you go, the less you'll see me talk about any second focal plane scope. Because as nice as some of them are, I'm not paying that much money for a second focal plane scope. Again, I'm a precision guy at heart. The shooting discipline I enjoy the most is long range, and that spills over to all the other things I do. I hunt almost exclusively, with some minor exceptions, almost exclusively with front focal plane scopes, and I make them work. I have particle but reticles and all that. So as you go in the higher price ranges, you'll see me talk almost exclusively about front focal plane designs, because I think with modern technology, there's no excuse to not have that, because I use the reticle so much for so many different things. Right? So, um, but let's see. So let me quickly look if I'm forgetting anything obvious. We talked about Schmitz, Leupold vortex, toxin, Telson toxin, stuff like that. We talked about low light. That's also Schmidt. So before we move on to move up into the higher price ranges, one of the things we talked about it a little bit last week. Shit, we're already at an hour and a half. Crap. Hopefully we'll get through all the hunting scopes today. I'm gonna have to do part three. But we didn't talk about burrs very much. We talked about burrs full fields and the lower price ranges. But when you get to 1,000-ish, a little bit more price range, you have the burris scopes with integrated displays. And
Mm-hmm.
that's scopes like Veracity PH on the hunting side, those are MOA scopes, and XTR-PS, which you can commonly find at around 2,000 and just under on a precision side of things. XTR-PS scopes have reticles that are a little bit thinner than I like for hunting. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to convince them to put something else into one of them. But having that display at the top of the scope is when you are nervous and full of adrenaline is kind of a cool thing, because you with both of them, because there is ballistics integrated, as in lookup table for the distance. When you dial the turret, you can set it up so that you see in the top of the scope the range that you dialed for the cartridge you're shooting. And I found that when I'm nervous and on a clock or in a rush, I found that to be spectacularly valuable. Okay? The way they're doing the screen integration, it doesn't really introduce any significant optical compromises. But both of these Veracity PH and XTRPS scopes, they're both made in the Philippines. They're very good. But if you look at the pure optical quality, yeah, the Schmidt Classic is going to be better. But that type of electro-optic integration that Burris is doing, in some ways, for many people, for many applications, it is a game changer. Um, because everything's in front of you, it's much harder to get confused what distance you're at. If you have not seen them, I would strongly recommend you go find a store that has one and go take a look. May or may not be for you, depending how stuck in your ways you are, how open you are to new things. But I think that's the way of the future. SIG is also doing something similar. I just don't have a whole lot of hands-on time with them. I have a lot more mileage with Burris. And that display inside, I think, makes a big difference. You've played with XTRPS, right, Andrew?
Yep. Don't
What are
own
your
one.
thoughts?
Uh,
You don't?
I I think there will be a dedicated crowd that appreciates that. I am looking forward to whatever comes in 2027, maybe. Maybe by 2027, we'll have a fully integrated system that has a few other features. I'm sure you're aware of my line of thinking here. There's a couple other features. When we can get
Mm-hmm.
that all inside of one optic, I'm signing up and I'm saying, yes, I'm totally interested. Right now, there's a couple things about this that are still a little clumsy. And I'm just looking forward to the next iterations that are coming down the line. But I will give props to Burris. I don't do any collabs with Burris right now, but I will give props to Burris and Sig, for that matter, for being willing to try and taking the capital and putting it towards something that is actually, it has a high potential of being more valuable It's not just the same old, same old. They're doing something cool. I value that. I like that.
Mhm. Somebody has to be pushing the limits,
Yeah.
to be blunt. So, okay. So let's see. Um, that roughly exhausts the under 2,000 options, I think. So the way I do it on my website, next jump is also a big jump. We're talking about scope between $2,000 and $3,000. So before we went for Pete Grant, one day, the hell? So I'm trying to pin a message and it says must be room administrator. I am a freaking room administrator. How interesting. I think, Andrew, I think it is confused with who is administrator. Would you mind clicking on the last message by Pete Grant and see if it allows you to paste it on the screen?
Yeah. Um, hmm.
It's not letting you either?
Nope.
Yeah, for some reason I decided to revoke my privileges. It's my freaking live stream. Okay. That's entertaining. Wow. All right, I'll complain to them. So I'm gonna take a picture of this if you don't mind, because I've been talking to Rumble's customer support. I want them to see this. Okay, I'll just read it out. So Pete goes, one day there will be a scope that you mount and shoot one round at a target and it will self-zero. It will also have an LRF and will self-adjust for range and wind. Yeah, we kind of have that on the other side of the fence, but I don't think we're going to have the whole thing in here anytime soon for civilians. I will say this. So there is Burris Eliminator, scope of the built-in laser rangefinder. It's not legal everywhere in the country. It's legal in a lot of places. It's in a $2,200 to $2,400 range, roughly. So it is in that price range we are discussing now. The earlier version of the Eliminator scope, it's called Eliminator, they were pretty good, but there were always some optical compromises. They still are, but the optical system is much better worked out than it used to be. The current one is Eliminator 6. It has a built-in laser rangefinder, and it pretty much lights up. Again, you need to program your ballistics in there, and it pretty much lights up roughly your aiming point. On the screen, it doesn't give you wind. You have to figure out wind yourself, but it gives you the holdover. I've talked about in the past, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. If you are a competent shot, it will give you the ability to shoot a little, it will give you another extra 100 yards of practical distance in the field. If you're not a competent shot, it's only going to make you miss more. It's not a replacement for skill, but if you already have the skill, it will augment it. Okay. So other than the Eliminator, it sounds like I don't think you had too much mileage with it, right, Andrew?
Just messed around with them. Never owned one.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had the different versions of it. The Eliminator 6 is very good. And at some point I'm going to do a thorough review. But so what are you seeing in the 2,000 to 3,000 price range that you think stands out?
I'll start with something that I don't think should be there, but I see it.
Mhm.
Uh, no offense to Zeiss, but they advertise their 4 to 25 as like that's one of the stickers on the box is hunting optic, and I
You're talking
don't.
about the S3?
Yeah, the S3. Sorry, the S3 4 to 25
Mhm.
first focal plane by 50. It's that's advertised as a hunting optic, and that I'm sorry, the ZFI or is it the ZMFI? That reticle is not a hunting reticle until you hit the illumination. That illumination, Zeiss does illumination great. They do a really
Yeah,
good
they
job.
do a very good job of
S3s,
it.
S5s.
Hmm.
The S5s, they're wonderful with illumination. And I have quite a bit of time with both of those lines.
Hmm.
Actually, probably the majority of my experience has been with those two scopes. Sorrowfully, that's what I've spent a huge amount of my time with, and I'm pretty
I
much done
wouldn't
with
be
them.
sorrowful about it. They're both are pretty nice scopes. I'm
Yeah,
more partial to the S5s than S3s, but
yeah,
they're nice scopes.
yeah. Out of all the optics brands that I collaborate with, Zeiss is not a thing anymore. So I will say I really like the S3 for certain long range applications. It's a very thin reticle. And as soon as you turn the illumination on, that's going to MSRP around the $2,200 price point. It's just
Hmm.
barely over the edge. And typically, with sales, that's going to reduce, just like how you discussed a lot of these optics dropping down in price point. It's going to drop down, but it just, compared to some of the other options we're probably going to talk through here, I wouldn't pick the S3 for a hunting application. Um, I kind of like the idea of sticking to 30 millimeters when I can for hunting scopes and lower weight. That's not a super lightweight scope. It does have some optical compromises for a $2,200 scope, and I still like it. It's not a terrible design. I just don't think I would push that up in this category. And I've heard a number of people, in fact, I've seen a number of people throwing the S3 on their very average hunting rifle or like a very traditional hunting rifle. I think it's a weird mix. Um, for what you're paying for those features and that design, I think there's other optics that make more sense than that one does. And I don't find the light collection to be amazing in that scope.
So, in terms of light codes, actually not bad at all. So there are, I think, four that I can think of, but there may be more rifle scopes that come out of the same core Light Optics Works design. There are 4 to 25 or 5 to 25 scopes. The least expensive one is tracked, 4 to 25 by 50. And then stepping up in price a little bit are the Zeiss S3, Ravic Acura. The Ravic version is 5 to 25, but it's the same core scope, and Element Nexus Gen 2. So the Nexus and the Ravic are 30 millimeter tube scopes. Ravic is a little bit heavier, Nexus is a little bit lighter. As far as long range hunting scopes goes, they're very good. If you are an MOA shooter, I will go out on a limb and say that Ravic in their Acura 5 to 25 scope probably has the best general purpose hunting reticle you will find in a rifle scope of this type. Absolutely spectacular. Like I sold mine and I kind of regret it, but I'm just not an MOA shooter. I needed a mill. Again, not a lightweight scope, right? But as far as long range hunting reticles go, with general purpose use and low light, good light, bad light, etc., the Ravic is spectacular. But again, you have to be an MOA shooter, uh, which I'm just not. Okay.
Mhm.
Nexus is probably the lightest of this 4 to 25 cohort, and the reticle is not bad at all. And Element guys are very sweet people. I really like them. The basic problem with these scopes is that now on the 2 grand and up, you're kind of getting a rough price range. Nexus is right at 2K, I think, where everything becomes a hard sell. And remember, the higher we go in price, the less I'm willing to compromise on anything. And for example, one of the things that Element guys do, they're precision guys, so I understand why they do it. I just happen to disagree with that approach. When they do the tree reticle, they illuminate the whole tree, which I think for
Mhm.
hunting scope is just wrong. Because you turn on illumination, there's too much shit illuminated, and it will obscure your target. For competition, it works great. For hunting, I just don't think it's a good way to go. Right. So that's pretty much that. But once you get past 2 grand, I mean, there is some precision crossover scopes like Night Force 4 to 16 by 42, which is a spectacular scope, the attacker. I don't like the NX8s very much. The 4 to 32 is not a bad scope, but the 4 to 16 attacker is spectacular. Under 3 grand, you can see some slightly more hunting oriented versions of March scopes.
Yeah.
For
Is that is
example,
that
go ahead.
is the 3 to 21, or they have a three to, I'm trying to remember what it is. They have like a 3 to 21 pretty lightweight
March has
optic.
a
It's
3
been
to
around.
24.
3 to 24. That's what it is.
Yeah,
It's
so
been around for a
that
while.
is an older design. It was not bad. It's not as appealing today as it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Still very nice. March has this crazy 1.5 to 15 by 42
Yeah.
scope. There are different versions of it. There is second focal plane, front focal plane, and dual focal plane. I have the dual focal plane that I use for my MPVO comparison, which is the most general purpose scope in existence. But
Hmm.
it's $3,400. And because of the crazy mag range, there are some compromises on high power. Compromises by March standards. It's still very good. But for example, you can get the second focal plane version or of this 1.5 to 15 by 42 with their fiber dot reticle under 3 grand. You go
Hmm.
shoot anything you want with it. You can get, if you're not looking for um, to go really, really fast on 1.5 power, they have front focal plane only versions with relatively normal mil hash reticles, which are just spectacular. And again, 1.5 to 15, that means you can do literally everything with that scope. And it's 24 ounces, 10.5 inches long, it's tiny, it's relatively light, etc. So there are good options there. As I said, there are a couple of attackers are in there. On the Vortex side, interesting, there is not a ton in there, but they're supposed to have a Razer Gen 3 4 to 24 coming out this year. That's going to be right around 30 ounces, 31 ounces, something like that. So it'll be promising, but until there is a production scope, I can't really endorse anything, as you can imagine. Uh, what else? So there are always a few Schmidts in there, but with Schmidt, I kind of can't help but think like the good stuff is uber expensive, or the classics, which are a lot for the money, right? I don't like anything from Schmidt of that much in a $2,000 to $3,000 range. Leopold has the VX6 HD, which is second focal plane scope. Nice scope, but again, I think it doesn't offer enough for the money, for me at least. That's kind of not where I like to do. Well, I think we lost Pete Grant. He's going to sleep too. We'll be wrapping up in about 15 minutes as well. So, what else? What else is in there? What else do you like in a $2,000 to $3,000 range, Andrew?
I don't own anything personally, so it'd be mostly my experience messing around with other people's stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
a little bit weak in my experience. Um, I mean, Revit. I really wish that there were more MRAD versions of optics. There's a few companies that are just so stuck on MOA stuff, but I think I could really get into that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Hold on a second. One moment. My wife tried to call me. I don't like to ignore my wife. So let me tell her that I'll call her back.
And where are you streaming from today? I forgot.
Dallas. I'm in my hotel room in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas.
My
Okay.
office is here in Richardson, so I spend a good amount of time in Dallas.
Mhm.
Mr. Cuntbucket, who wasn't listening to me earlier, does Carlos have anything to offer in this category range? No, not anything worthwhile. Not in my opinion. So, where was I? Yeah. All right. We've got 16 minutes left, so let's go hit the price no object category, which I've touched on a little bit briefly. In the $2,000 to $3,000, honestly, like I said, you can do crossover tactical like the attacker. If you do MOA, Revec Acura is really worth looking at. And if you want something tacky, Burris Eliminator 6 4 to 20 by 52 with a built-in laser rangefinder, I think is a very underrated option. Moving on up, 3,000 plus, money no object. Like you already know what I like, right? So I'm a
Yeah.
Tenjin guy. I think the way they optimize an optical system is unlike anything else that's on the market, and I've measured them on MTF stations. So I've got a qualitative and quantitative data. We've talked about ZCO 4 to 20 by 50, which I think is an excellent scope. It's a little heavier, it's over 30 ounces. The 30 millimeter tube tangents are 27 ounces. What else do you like up there in the stratospheric price ranges?
The only ones that I have personal hands-on experience with would be I've seen a number of guys with a cap turret version of the 3 to 15, and
Hmm.
it's yeah, I'll agree. It's amazing how you can put a few optics together and go back to back to back. And if I don't think you even have to have a super trained eye, you can start to tell this looks better and it's more comfortable and it's easier to get behind. And the weight thing, the 3 ounce difference might not matter to some people, but I think it's impressive that they can get the footprint down and the comfort behind the optic just to what it is. It was impressive. I didn't own it, but I could tell in a lineup of 4 or 5, maybe it was more than that, 4 and 5 optics. I was like, dang, I can actually tell pretty quickly that this is a superior optic, and the image and resolution was fantastic. So there's one. Um, March, as much as I like a lot of March optics, the 1.5-15, only one I've had experience with was a capped version of that. I would
Hmm.
really like to play around with an exposed turret version because you talk about that crossover capability.
Yeah.
Did you have a hand, or maybe you designed the FMC one?
FMC is not mine, so I designed the FML TR1 and FML3 reticles for them,
Got it. Got it.
and those are in 4.5 to 28 and 5 to 42 scope.
Got it. Got it. Never
With the
mind. Okay.
reticle for the 1.5 to 15, at that point I already stopped consulting for them. They had some issues, so after they released it with the wrong reticle, they came and asked for help. So I cleaned it up a little bit, but it's not my design; it's their design.
Got it. Okay. I actually prefer the FML. That is a great reticle. Just looking through that a few times, that's solid
I'm glad to
solid
know.
reticle. Is that point one subtension?
FML3, it's based on point twos.
Oh,
It's
no,
it's point two spacing.
not sorry, not the spacing, line thickness.
So FML1, that was done before me. That's point one milliradian line thickness. That's
Okay,
the origin design. FML3, they're a little bit thinner, but the way they did it, I vary the thicknesses a little bit so that it's still visible across magnification range. There are
okay,
some tricks you can play there.
yeah. Uh, those are a couple. We already mentioned Revit. It's pretty cool. Uh, Man, I hate to say it, but if it was me and it was money that I was actually going to pay, I'm just gonna buy the I'm just gonna buy the 3 to 15.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. So the new entrant there is a Schmidt Meta 3 to 18 by 42. First, they had the second focal plane, and I had it and I hunted with it for a little bit, spectacular scope. And they introduced a front focal plane at SHOT Show, and I was hoping they'd have a production version in time for my hunt at the end of October, but it doesn't quite sound like it.
Hmm,
But it's a true alpha scope, and it's also about 26, 27 ounces with a good reticle, etc. Is it gonna beat out the Tangent? I'm not so sure, but it does a couple of things that it has a more sophisticated turret, because on the hunting version of the Tangent, the turret is relatively simple. It offers a tree reticle. Tangent is not a tree reticle, so it's going to be a real competitor. So we'll see. But I can't with the front focal plane meta until I spend time with it again. I can't recommend it. To me, if you are in that truly high-end price range and you want a absolutely world-class front focal plane hunting scope, your options are kind of limited. So ZCO 4 to 20 by 50 is a spectacular scope, but it is a precision-oriented scope.
hmm
Even the MPTC1 reticle, which I really like, it's thinner than I want for hunting. And remember, when I am shelling out this much cash, I am not going to compromise on anything.
Right.
For that amount of money, I want exactly what I want, and I will not compromise on it. And if they don't offer it, I'm not paying for it. So Tangent on the 3 to 15 Hunter version made the slightly bolder reticles. You can actually see the bloody thing in all magnifications and all lighting conditions. And again, it may not be a big difference for a lot of people. It's a ton of difference for me. So, and I don't have the hunter version. I actually have the earlier M version with the Gen 2 XR reticle that I use.
Hmm.
But again, if I were spending my own money on a once in a lifetime hunting rifle, that would be the Tangent Hunter. For now, we'll see what Schmidt does with the front focal plane method, and beyond that, there's just not a ton. Okay, guys, we've got 10 minutes left. Locals limits my live streams to 2 hours. So if I go past 2 hours, it's not visible on my locals website. So if there are, I see we are losing people right, left, right, and sideways. Everybody's going to sleep. If there are any questions, Andrew and I are going to hang out here for another 10 minutes. And then I'm going to wrap this up and bid you good night. And thank you for attending my 100th episode of DLO Live.
Yeah.
It took me some
Congrats.
time. I'm not super consistent with these things. We have there are all these professional YouTubers who are online every other day, 6 hours at a time, and all that. I actually have a life to live and a day job and all that. So for me, 100 episodes is a lot.
Hmm.
But anyhow, if there are questions on anything we've covered or anything else, now's the time. I'm gonna quickly scan through the chat box and see if there is anything that I missed when I was looking through it. And if you guys got nothing else, I'm gonna take this as a sign that I can go to sleep. Let's see, I think I've got. So far, so good. We did a pretty good job of working through the chat box. All right.
Well, I'll give a quick plug while you're looking
Okay.
through there for people who are watching.
Oh, go for it.
Um, for a few years now, Leo's been running this, and he's got a whole archive on his channel of educational videos. And I'm going to tell you, if your hobby is getting into optics, you're probably watching this because that's true. If your hobby is optics, precision rifles, hunting, taking these things more seriously, understanding the mechanics and the operations of an optic can help save you money. It'll make you a more interesting person, I've found. Talking to Ilya at SHOT Show this last year, understand the mechanics better of how simple things work, like the parallax cell or the functions of the scope. This has helped me quite a bit in my understanding of what I actually want and what I want to be invested in, getting things paired up a little better, and just being more pleased with my experience in shooting. You really should consider watching through his archive of some of those videos. It's fascinating stuff, and whether it was him or anybody else, I think it's just really important information for people to know if this is your hobby, and you don't want to sound like a complete idiot, which I'm striving to sound less like a complete idiot every day. But if you don't want to, you really need to watch those. He's got 100 episodes of live streams where he answers a million questions about these things. Oh, somebody just commented on the Minox, the ZP5 3 to 15. Maybe that would be interesting.
So they are related. Designs are not the same. I've had them side by side. Optically, they're close. Tangent's a little better. The problem with Minox, they basically bailed out of the US market. There's barely any support. ZP5 3 to 15 is an excellent scope, but can I recommend purchasing it? I've heard so many horror stories from people about trying to get support with their Minox products that I
Hmm.
just stopped recommending them. See, ever since they were purchased and kind of absorbed by Blazer, it all like over time it all just went to shit. Which is a shame. They made very nice stuff. I used to know a few people there, but it just all kind of disintegrated on me. So I did find a question in there that you and I missed. The question was again. I'm sorry I couldn't put it up on the screen because Rumble Studio went crazy on me. Um, have whether either one of us have done any hunting with handguns?
I'll let you answer.
Have you? That sounds like a yes. Yes.
Uh, I've done some hunting with handguns, but not big game.
Okay. So I keep on planning to. I even put together a couple of 10 millimeter long barrel handguns for hunting, but I have not done any yet. I will find a way eventually,
Yeah.
but not yet. Um, so, oh, that's actually so. Mr. Alpine goes. I got a chance to look at the Zeiss V8. I think it was a 2.5 to 20 next to the ZCO 4 to 20, and I was expecting the ZCO to be better optically. But in the overcast conditions, the V8 seemed to be on another level, especially in color and contrast. Any thoughts on these? I know it's SFP, but it made me consider not waiting for the matter. So there are two versions of the V8. There was the first one with 36 millimeter tube, then they scaled back and redesigned them a little bit and went to the smaller tube. And the second version looked very good. I have not done a thorough test. I have looked at them a little bit. I thought they were very nice. Um, but again, me personally, for this amount of money, I'm going from focal plate. Another thing that I don't know what the future of the V8 line is going to be. So historically, Zeiss has been claimed to have been making the V8 and the S5 scopes in Germany, and they announced earlier this year that they're phasing out all manufacturing in Germany over the next year or so. So I have no clue if V8 scopes are going to persist or not, if they're going to have somebody else make it for them, not, but they are not going to be building any sport optics in Germany starting about a year and a half from now. So I don't know, but I liked what I saw. Like the second version of the it seemed to be very good, but I did not do a full test. So we'll see. I don't know. Again, if you are in the market, look, I mean, you looked at it, right? So there is no replacement for looking at it with your own eyes. If you had a chance to look at it and you were impressed and it's in your price range and the configuration works for you, go for it. If you found a scope you like and it works for you, I wouldn't wait for anything, just use that. If you wait for something around the corner, there's always something good around the corner. You will wait forever for the best thing because every year there's the thing that's slightly better than the one before. You found something that works, just go for it. Okay. All right. I think we're out of time. So if anything comes up to you that you wanted to ask but didn't get a chance to, please put it in the comment, and I will be checking occasionally, and I'll make sure that if the question is for Andrew, that he gets it. Thank you guys for sticking with us for these 2 hours. Andrew, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
next is going to be episode 101. I am far from done. Thank
Right
you
on.
all, and good night.
All right. Thanks, man.
And this
100 episodes. Wow.
Hold on, the stream is still active. It says the end stream failed, and the stream is still active. Rumble Studio is doing something retarded on me again. Let's try again. Huh, it doesn't want to die. That's ridiculous. I'm gonna find another way to kill it. Let's try this.
There we go. Later.
The stupid thing, it appears to have. The stupid thing appears to have signed me out, so I had to close it, sign back in, and now I think I can kill the live stream. I'm gonna have a